Let's begin. Kumlan Avlat Gemara. Today's blot is Daf Pei Amud Aleph. We learned in the Mishnah a quick summary of Machlekes Rabbi Yeshua. Rabbi Yeshua made a statement that he heard sometimes somebody is sterile, can give chalitza to his sister-in-law, and to his wife you have to give chalitza to, and so on. And sometimes he heard that you don't. He doesn't know how to learn it. So we had an argument between Rabbi Akiva, his student, and Rabbi Eliezer, his colleague, as to what exactly it is. Rabbi Akiva said that somebody who was born a chalitz, no sorry, chama, there's no chalitza there because he never ever had a shasa kosher, never was able to procreate. The Torah wasn't talking about people like him. But somebody was a saris adam, that means there was a time that he was all right. Then he became sterile later on in life. Since as a person he was capable of giving birth, therefore the Torah was addressing him, and all the din of chalitza apply. Rabbi Yeshua says exactly the opposite. He says saris chama, somebody born that way, somebody's born sterile, there's an antidote for him in the future, therefore there is chalitza. But somebody became a saris adam, self-castrated or whatever, became sterile, it's not shaykh in the future, and therefore it's no longer applicable to him, all the dinim of chalitza and so on. The Gemara gave the sign that he does that when he urinates, it doesn't form an arch. Now we'll talk about a saris. A saris is somebody doesn't reach puberty. So we treat now there's two possible reasons why somebody age of 13 doesn't reach puberty: either a delayed puberty or because they never will, because they're a saris. So if it's a delayed puberty, let's say the age of 17, suddenly they have puberty, they were a cotton until 17, and 17 they become bar mitzvah. If there's a certain stage in their life and we realize they're never going to reach puberty, they become a saris. Now there's two possibilities that we reach that conclusion. Either they don't have the signs of a saris, but it's already 35 years old. We've seen a person live 70. If they live the majority of their life and still didn't reach puberty, they'll never reach puberty. So they're saris, and they become a gadol at 35 years old. We're soon going to see whether that's retrospective or not. But if they have the signs of puberty, if they have the signs of a saris, and the Gemara will soon describe to us what the signs of a saris for a male is and a female, then at the age of 20, according to Beis Hill, that's when they become a gadol. Okay, so now after they showed us the signs of saris, they had no signs of puberty, they became 20 years old, they say, okay, now you're a gadol. And then 3 years later, suddenly they started showing signs of puberty, suddenly they had hair growth and so on. That once you reach 20 and we establish your saris, any hair growth later on is just an aberration. It doesn't mean anything. So bearing all that in mind, now we'll understand the Gemara. Says the Gemara, Blazer says, well, no, he disagrees. He says a saris chama born that way. Yes, there is chalitza. A saris adam, since there's no future, there's no antidote, no chalitza. But I mean, that's a question we learned. Ben Esim Shona, somebody reaches the age of 20, and still did not show signs of puberty. Yavir Aisha Ben Esim, all it was bring evidence that he's 20 years old. But who has saris? That is what we established to be a saris. And therefore, loy chalitz v'loy miyabim. There's no chalitza, there's no yibum. Seems we're talking here about a saris chama, someone born that way, and there's no chalitza, no yibum, which is like Rabbi Akiva, not like Rabbi Eliezer, who says a saris chama. But that's not a problem because he's a Tani can argue. We'll soon see what the problem is. What about a girl, an islandess? Call her an islandess, a male ram, because she doesn't have the capacity to procreate. Lo Yavish didn't bring the sign, didn't show signs of puberty. Yavi and Aisha says same thing. 20 years old, we hear islandess, and we'll establish she's an islandess. So therefore, there's no chalitza because she was never able to procreate. Divrei Beis Hill comes on Beis Shammai, says not age of 20 but 18. Zev b'nei shmoneh. 18 years old is the sign is when you're an adult, and that's why you b'shmoneh l'chuppah. You're 18 years old when you get married. And Beis Hillel says 20 years old is when you, according to many opinions, that's when you start getting punished for averis from the heaven. That's when we treat you as a mature person. Rabbi Eliezer says it depends, a male or a female. Hazacha kediv, still a male, 20 years old, no signs of puberty, and you do have the signs of a saris, we'll establish your saris. If you have the signs of a saris before 20, we're not going to establish it yet, but only 20. And but Nikeva, a girl, kediv b'shame 18. And why is that? A woman matures faster than a man. So what do we see from here? Rabbi Eliezer is part of the discussion, and we're talking about a saris chama. And Rabbi Eliezer therefore clearly says that a saris chama, he says that he's having the same discussion. There's no chalitza. In our Mishnah, he clearly said that a saris chama, you're born that way. Yes, because there's an antidote, and you can be involved in yibum and chalitza. So how do we reconcile the two? So first answering Gemara. He must have changed his mind. So the question is, which one did he change his mind from? So our question is, which one did he change his mind? Which was said first and which was second? Toshma coming here, we learned Brisa, and because we're going to have one Mishnah and one Brisa together, that's going to be the final conclusion. And what does the Brisa say? The time Rabbi says, Sodis Chama, somebody who was born sterile, yes, there is chalitza. He can be chalitz his wife if he dies. He can chalitz his wife. She came b'minan misrapin b'Alexandria Mitzrayim. There are cures for such people in Alexandria Mitzrayim. The Gemara brings it down a number of times. They had all the leading doctors and physicians, and they were modern medicine at that time. So what does he claim? Rabbi Lezer here saying exactly like our Mishnah, that a Saris Chama, because the future is involved in Yibum. So we discount the other Mishnah. Rabbi Lezer, I'll give you a different answer. You totally misunderstood Rabbi Eliezer here. Rabbi Lezer says, he never changed his mind. So what do you mean he needs to change his mind? How come over here he says a Saris Chama? He was commenting on what a Saris, at what age you become a Saris, but not that he never mentioned a word about Chalitza and Yibum. He was referring to something else altogether. When do you become an adult? Generally, for punishment, in capital punishment, in a bezdin, to determine when you become an adult. And according to Rabbi Eliezer, a girl 18 and a boy 20 if you don't have the signs of puberty, but you know the signs of Saris. Nothing to do with Chalitza Yibum. So he's not contradicting himself at all. For sure they have Chalitza Yibum, even there are Saris. Says the Gemara, eat what we learned. If let's say, so here we have an interesting argument. What happens? He ate trefa fats, right? So under bar mitzvah, you don't get punished, but over mitzvah you do. This person didn't reach signs, doesn't have any signs of puberty, and establishes a saris at the age of 20. What happened? What do you mean at the age of 20? Now we realize this person is a saris. Does that mean that retrospectively this person became bar mitzvah at the age of 13? We were waiting for the shtei iris for the signs of puberty, but this person never would reach it. So now we know that this person will never have signs of puberty, which means okay, so 13 became an adult because of the years. Or do we say no, that you only become an adult now that we establish your saris, from now on you're an adult, not prior? Interesting argument, Rabbi Shmuel. Even we learn, you ate trefa fats after 12, ben shmanasa till 18, even though the and then at the age of 18, suddenly you establish the simonim of a saris. We're following this is a girl, and we're following Rabbi Eliezer, who says when it comes to a girl, is 18 years old. And also because it's 12 years old. So I was talking about a girl there. And afterwards, after the age of 18, after which Abasara suddenly reached puberty, and the chiddush is, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter to reach puberty later. We don't say, this person was is a regular person, and was once we've established some of the saris, that's it. The puberty afterwards has no bearing. Rav says, it's retrospective. Okay, so this girl became, we thought we were waiting and waiting. Turned out to be that this girl was an islandess, and at the age of 12, she became bas mitzvah, so she will get punished, or she has to bring a chatas, whatever it is for the sin that she did afterwards. The Shmuel says, Shmuel says, no. When you establish that this person is a sterile, or an islandess, that's when they become an adult. Maskar Abiyah said, according to Rav, islandess to Rav Meir, we're going to have Gemara Ksubas, which is actually like we're going to have Gemara Ksubas, an argument. We know that if you rape a girl, you seduce a girl, you have to pay a penalty. It says naida. It's called a naida. What about if she was under 12 years old? And once she's a begeris, you don't. Once she's over 12 and a half, you don't. But if she's under 12 and a half, between 12 and 12 and a half, she's a naira, you have to pay all these penalties. What about under 12 years old? According to Rameh, there's no knas. By a ketana, there's no knas. There's no penalty. And according to Chachamim, there is. The question is, according to Rameh, that the only time that the penalty is by naira, comes out that by what do you call it? That the according to Rameh and according to Rav, there should be a knas. Let's say this girl was what do you call it? Was 12 years old, whatever it is, when she was raped, but she had no signs. So nothing happens, but when she reaches the age of 18, suddenly we establish she's a saris, and according to Rab, it's retrospective. That means she's a ketana. Retrospective means that she was a ketana, an adult. So there was a 3 periods. It was by a girl. There's 3 periods. There's a ketana, then there's like adolescence, a naira, and then there's an adult, a 12 and a half. So there should be knas in this particular case. Abaye says no. Mikatnus from young and onwards. Abaye says that in this particular case, because of the age of 18, we make it retrospective. Turns out to be that she did not have any puberty or anything else. Even though it's retrospective, there's no adolescence here. It goes straight from being a minor to an adult. It goes to be adult. Yeah. So there's no knasti whatsoever. Says the Amalei, Rabbi Yosef interestingly made a very nice comment. He says, Abaya, what a beautiful thing you said. Ko Yehani Mali, so all the wonderful things that you say, Yis Amru Mishmai. I wish that you would say it in my name, because I will bring you a brisa to support it. So in the future, when you say over this Gemara, say Rabbi Yosef said. The Tanya, and we learn, Ein hasaris nidnik ben seir that a saris, somebody sterile, cannot become a ben seir and murder. Cannot become ben seir and murder. The fisha ain't ben seir and murder, because the rules of ben seir and murder will not be judged only when there's puberty down below. And because Asaris has no leverage puberty, so there's no ben seir murder by Asaris, by someone sterile. And likewise, it says in the Braisa, the ain islandist nidoinus kenai amarosa. An islandist can never be treated like a girl who was engaged and committed an aveda, because she was never a naida. She was katnusna yoslabaga, because straight from being a minor, she goes straight to being an adult. You don't have 3 stages because she never reached puberty. So then, therefore, there's only two stages, like by a boy: minor, adult. Amar Rabu said, "Simone saris va'ionis." He says that the signs of a saris, of a male, someone who's sterile, the signs of somebody who is an island, of a woman who's sterile. Uben Shmeina, in the Gemara's times, Trace already says that things have changed. Shloch actually brings up certain physiological things, natures have changed. But in times of the Gemara, if a baby was born, an 7-month baby can live, and a 9-month baby, full period can live. But an 8-month baby that means 7 months was enough to fully develop. It had to develop 9 months, because some babies can develop in 7 months. This baby had to develop in 9 months, and if it was born in 8 months, it's not fully developed. It cannot exist. It cannot survive. It's called a ben shmeina. So he said that ben shmeina ain't oisin b'maisa, that a ben shmeina you do not do anything. You treat them as if they're a living thing, even if they have signs. And according to this opinion, even if, let's say, they look fully developed to us, they have nails and hair and so on when they were born, nevertheless, we do not say this is a bar kayama until until they reach the age of 20. Until they reach the age of 20, then we can decide, this person is going to survive. Tosfos has a problem with Rashi. What do you mean? The fact is, it's a healthy child. What do you mean? It's 18 years old. You say a healthy child enough. Maybe the child won't make it. Why not? That's not what he's talking about. So we're not talking about the ben shmeina. But anyway, the Gemara. It's a general question. Ben shmeina, how in the world can you talk about 20 years old? An 8-month baby cannot exist. Well, Tanya, we learned Ben shmeina. In fact, if a baby was born 8 months old, it's like a stone on Shabbos. You're not touch it, also tell you not even move the baby because it's muktzah, because the baby definitely is not going to survive. Avalima, the woman is full of milk, and also the baby had, while the baby is alive, you have to feed it. So you can't lift the baby. You have to bend down and nurse the baby then. And the only reason why we allow that is because it's sakana for both the mother and for the child. And so what do we see clearly from here? So we see, what do you tell me that an 8-month-old child, you wait till 20 years old, and we say, sorry, it can't even survive. So
what about Sar Balei Chaim?
Yeah, so we're saying we feed it, but this is not to move muktzah, so therefore you bend down and you feed it that way to avoid having to move the baby itself. So there's no Sar Balei Chaim because you are feeding it. Just you're doing it a different way than normal. Mm-hmm. So Hocha b'may skinin, the Gemara says, we're talking about the Kishigomru Simona. We're talking about over here is the 20 years old. We're talking about an 8-month-old child. That the 8-month-old child is fully developed, has hair and has nails, so on and so forth. So therefore, the child is going to live beyond a month, but we need to wait till the age of 20 before we can determine and say, yeah, the child is going to live forever, full life. The Tanya we learned, Eze ben Shmeina, that we learned what's an 8-month-old child, according to the rabbi, Tanakama, 8 months. I don't care if it's fully developed, not fully developed. That's called an 8-month-old baby, and therefore you have all the issues that we had. Rebbe says no. There's 2 kinds of 8-month-old babies. On 8-month-old baby, you see the nails aren't developed and the hair is not developed. That's a problem. But if it's fully developed hair-wise and nail-wise, then we'll say really it's a 7-month baby, but it hung around the mother's womb for another month. But it's a 7-month baby. Sometimes you have to induce the child, even though it's a full 9 months, but the child doesn't want to get out. So it's a 7-month baby that was already fully developed at 7 months. Came out in the 8th month. The child wasn't in a rush to get out of his mother's womb, to exit. Rebbe says, it's a question of science. If the hair and the nails have not been fully developed, then we know it's an 8-month-old baby. It's only because we say that it's not developed, but if the nails and hair is developed, even though it's an 8-month baby, we'll say, we will say, we'll say that it's really a 7-month baby, and the baby will live. But what? But it hung around for an extra month. So this is the end of this particular, this is Rebbe's opinion. So there are 2 kinds of 8-month baby. Says the Gemara, so the Chiddush of Avu is that even according to Rebbe, we will not, okay, the baby is a 7-month baby, but we will not say that this child is considered a surviving child until the child is 20 years old. And that's what the Rishonim have a big problem with. Why not? A healthy child and everything else, why wouldn't you? But yeah, that's how it actually learns. That's what Avu was saying. Even according to Rebbe, that it's really a 7-month baby that's delayed a month, you have to wait to 20 years before you can say, because it was born in the 8th month. Says the Gemara, that's a question of Hoda, but Rabbi Tisva did a story, Isha, a woman, her husband went overseas for 12 months and he came back. Suddenly she gave birth. Now, 12 months, you would only assume that she must have had some affair with somebody, 3 months after her husband left, because babies last, go for 9 months. So therefore, we should accuse the baby or allege the baby is a mamzer. So he ruled no. And he said the baby is kosher. Why? He followed the view. Come on, he followed the view of Rebbe. What did Rebbe say? Rebbe taught us that it's possible for a baby to be fully developed, a certain time, and the baby just sits there in the stomach, not developing any further. Same thing here. It's possible it's a 9-month baby, and 3 months it hung around the mother's womb. And we'd rather say that than to say that she committed adultery. Come on, that the baby hung around for a while. The baby hung around a while. So the question is, how can Rabbi Tisva rule like Rebbe when he's a das yachid? He's a lone opinion against the rabbis, because the rabbis don't agree with this thing. They say 8-month baby is an 8-month baby. They don't say it's a 7-month baby hung around for a month. No, they don't believe in this whole concept that the baby's birth was delayed. So how can he say we had 9 months delayed by 3 months? Answer the Gemara. Rebbe is not a lone opinion. Even Avshim Gamliel agrees with Rebbe's sentiment, because he also says, he says that since he also agrees with this view that a baby sometimes just hangs around, therefore it's no longer Rebbe alone opinion, it's Rebbe and Avshim Gamliel. Where do we see this view? The time if the baby spent 30 days, if after the baby was born, it lived for 30 days, it's no longer a navel, even though it's born the 8th month. Why? How can it be? Because we're going to say that really it's a 7-month baby. If it survived for 30 days, that tells us that really it's a 7-month baby who just didn't exit his mother's womb until the 8th month. But really it's a 7-month baby, so it's fully developed. So we see that he also agrees with this opinion that babies can stay around for a while. So we learn what are the signs of a sorry? Somebody's born a sorry. A number of signs. Number one is, before we get the sign, if he's 20 years old, and then puberty, and then he has a sign, then we call him a saris. Labels. The fact that he reaches puberty after 20, once we have the telltale signs that he's a saris, that's it. In every respect, these are the signs of a saris. In other words, 20 years old, you become an adult. At the age of 23, suddenly they have signs of puberty. So you can argue, well, 1 second, it's a late development, and therefore he was a cotton, and you shouldn't punish him in a bezin because he was a cotton until 23. No, we say once we establish you're a saris at the age of 20, you're an adult. We only had an argument whether it's retrospective or not. So it says over here, these are the signs of saris. First of all, he has no beard, no hair, no growth on the skin, on the face. Number two, visari lock. Number two is very thin hair, generally on his head. Number three, ubisari machlik, has 0 hair on his body. It's all smooth. Those are the signs of a male saris. You want to continue? That the water doesn't have any bubbles in it. There's no foam when he urinates. The yesh oimrim, no, there's no heat, there's no warmth there. Kol hamatomai, very nice to keep doesn't have that arch. The yesh oimrim, and others say, interesting. That's the yesh oimrim. And yesterday we had that was the only sign that we had. The yesh oimrim, others say, kol shashich v'zara doiche. That one that the shich v'zara, the semen is very watery. Others say that this urine doesn't go off, doesn't decompose, or doesn't have a smell or stench if it sits in a vessel overnight. Others say in the winter, if you take a bath, your steam comes out. The ain besari mile hevel, but this person's body is not warm, and therefore no steam comes out. These are all the signs of a saris. The voice. It's a very feminine voice. If you wouldn't see him and just hear the voice, you can't even tell whether it's a male or a female. These are all the signs of a saris. So reaches the age of 20, no puberty, has all of these signs. That's it. We'll soon see whether you need all the signs or even one of the signs. We established a saris and there's a late puberty, too bad. The age of the island is what's considered a woman in islands. Koshi Bas Esek, she's 20 years old. Below Hevia, base side is she's 20, same thing. This is Hill's view. And didn't bring during puberty, but Philip can we bring afterwards that is kind of she's still considered an island is the Elohim Simona. These are the signs of a woman who is an islandist. Number one, kosher dadim, she's flat chested. Number two, miskash tashmish, she has great difficulty in having relations. Rav Shimon Gamliel kosher she pulling by a woman, it sort of goes in, convex when to go down to that region. But this woman is just flat. And Shimon Lazar kosher koila avish has a very hoarse voice. The any the kelly benishalish can't when you if you don't see her, you can't even tell if it's a male voice or a female voice. Ikma we learned Simone sorry. So now we gave a number of signs for a male saris and a female saris. Buddha says in order to establish that someone is a saris, you need to have all the signs. Rabbi Yochanan says even one sign is enough to establish you're 20 years old, you didn't reach puberty, and you have one of these signs, your voice is wrong, then that's enough to establish. Says the Gemara. Hey, the heavy stay side is bezoken. If you have a couple of hairs in the beard, if there's a couple of hairs in the beard, now it's questionable. Maybe the person is going to reach puberty one day, or maybe not. Then, in order to establish that this person is sterile, as a saris, you need to have all the signs there prevalent there. Keep pleading when you're arguing. Only if you didn't have the sign of hair in the beard, do you still need all the signs, or one sign is sufficient to say that's it? If he doesn't arch the urine, that's enough to establish this person as saris. Talking about the age of 20, and there are no other signs of puberty or anything else. So I ask a question. I want you to look at Rav Nachman. Rav Nachman looked like a saris. He had no beard, nothing. I would like you to watch him take a shower. If there's heat coming out of his flesh, then I will give him my daughter because such a great Talmud Chacham and everything else. But I want to make sure they'll have grandchildren. We know that Nachman married the Reish Galusa's daughter, but maybe he ended up marrying more than one wife. Maybe he married her as well. So now the question is, all he asks is for one sign. That if you cancel one of the signs, in other words, heat coming in the flesh, no longer a saris. In other words, according to the Babu, you need all the signs in order to establish that someone is a saris. So isn't that a proof to the opinion that says that you need all the signs? Says, come on, Rav Huna follows Rav Huna. Says, no. Rav Nachman had a few hairs growing on his beard. He didn't have a normal beard. He had like a little later in Sanhedrin Ben Sira made fun of the people who had beards that went in all different directions, a little bit here, a little bit there. He had little splotches. So therefore, according to we just said in the Gemara before that if you have a few hairs on your beard, then you need to have all the signs according to everybody before we can establish your saris. Then the Mishnah says, "Sorry is like Tony. Sorry to be islandist. In what way are we comparing a saris, a male, to a female? My islandist, just like an islandist is natural. Saris b'dei shemayim. Saris also has to be born that way. A saris chama, and a saris chama cannot be involved in yibum, which is exactly the view of Rabbi Akiva, because you never had a shas hakosher. You were never able to procreate. So when the Torah was talking about the laws of yibum, they weren't discussing you because you're not in that picture. You can never build a legacy. Ushtamek Rabbi Akiva Dama, who says b'dei adam in b'dei shemayim loy, that only if it's natural, only if it's man-made, because you were a person that was capable of bearing children or procreating, the Torah was referring to you. Then the Mishnah said, if a Saris goes and gives chalitza, it's meaningless. So she can still marry a kohen because his chalitza is meaningless. But then it says, if he had relations with her, he ruined her that she can no longer marry a Yavam. And the kohen time, the who the only reason is that he shouldn't have had relations because it's his sister-in-law, and since he doesn't have the mitzvah of ibum, he had no right to have relations with her, so he committed a sin, and therefore now she's considered a zoina because your brother and sister-in-law, that's an issur of course, and therefore he's a zoina, therefore she cannot marry a kohen. Sounds like time with the who only because the brother-in-law there's a terrible sin, a grave sin involved in. And but let's say a stranger, she's not allowed to marry anybody. It's allowed. She's a shemeres yavim. She has to marry a brother-in-law. She then has nus with a stranger. She committed a lav. Seems from the Mishnah here, she's not a zayna. She could marry a kohen only because the brother-in-law who gets chorus. Lema, let us say they have it yutu Ravnuna. It's a question of Ravnuna. The Amar who said that shemeres yavam, shezin tzapsuli yavam. He said that a shemeres yavam. Avnuna said, Shemeres Yavam is like a married woman already because she's waiting for one of her brother-in-law. It's like a married woman, and if she commits znus, it's as if she committed adultery, and she's a zayna, and she is forbidden to a kohen. And our Mishnah seems to say that the only one that's forbidden, if this happens to her, is if she did it with her brother-in-law. Sorry. No proof from it. Who I the same thing would apply to Lach and a stranger. Nami, but I need a ton of Reisha, but today, because we're talking about the laws of a brother-in-law, don't Nami say today we won't mess with brother-in-law, but not to negate or to exclude a stranger. Maybe a stranger always like Amnuna. She's technically like a married woman waiting to marry her brother-in-law, and therefore as if she committed adultery, and she is a zayna. And then the Mishnah says, islands the same thing the brother gives chalitza to an island. Nothing happened. Timer, but if one of them had relations with her, and they ruined her. Timer the only because the brother-in-law had relations. But they didn't have relations. No, come on. This would seem to argue with Rabbi Yehuda. Why? Rabbi Yehuda argues that every islandess is considered like a zayna and cannot marry a kohen. And it seems to the Mishnah only because the brother had relations with her, he cannot marry a kohen. Did Rabbi Yehuda say island is zayna? Did Rabbi Yehuda say an islandess is like a zayna? So it seems that our Mishnah disagrees with that. Okay, we're up to the next Mishnah. I'll continue Mishnah in the laws of Saris tomorrow.